This is The Scoop for Friday.
I'm Sean Canan with the WMNF News headlines. Yesterday, experts at the National Hurricane Center released their forecast for the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season. Meteorologist Megan Borowski from the Florida Public Radio Emergency Network reports they believe that the total number of storms will be above normal.
The National Hurricane Center has called for an above-average season, which is on par with the dialogue among the forecasting community over the past several months. We've got positive anomalies in sea surface temperatures in the main development region of the Atlantic and higher ocean heat content. Another factor at play is the neutral state of the El Nino Southern Oscillation, and this phase typically produces lesser vertical wind shear over the Atlantic compared to the El Nino phase, and lower wind shear, of course, can be conducive for storm organization. But with the science jargon aside, we've got a few things to consider here. Yes, we're looking at an above average season, but we don't know yet when storms will develop or where they will track. Those variables are predicted weeks or days in advance of impact. So the bottom line, as we all know, is that it only takes one storm to severely impact our lives and property. So while conditions are quiet, it's best to start evaluating how vulnerable you are to hazards like wind, storm surge, or freshwater flooding, and create a plan that addresses the unique needs of you and your family.
Borowski says that preparing now can prevent additional and unnecessary stress later when a storm is threatening our area. This weekend will mark the 5th anniversary of the murder of George Floyd at the hands of police. WMNF's Chris Young reports Tampa activists plan to rally against an April executive order by President Trump they say emboldens racist and repressive policing.
Tampa Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression is rallying against Trump's executive order signed in April. The order calls for major federal support for state and local law enforcement to, quote, aggressively police communities, expands legal protections for law enforcement, and doubles down on diversity initiatives they say endanger citizens. The group calls it the Anti-George Floyd Policing Act and say it undoes progress made after the 2020 protests. Gareth Dawkins is a member of the organization.
And it basically is a sign of sort of like an expansion of the police and prison state, which, as you know, many of us know, is already quite large in the United States. It's one of the largest, if not the largest in the world.
They're rallying 5 years later in downtown Tampa's Curtis Hickson Park. That's the site of the first local protest after George Floyd's death in 2020.
True justice would have been that George Floyd is still alive today.
The protest starts Sunday at 5:30 p.m. Chris Young, WMNF News.
You can find more information about that protest on WMNF.org. Manatee County leaders voted this week to expand a local nature preserve by purchasing 13 acres of island property near the mouth of the Braden River. The Bradenton Herald reports the $41,000 purchase will add a missing piece to Manatee County's 85-acre Pine Island Reserve. It's just south of State Road 64 and the Manatee River. It's funded by the county's conservation tax that voters approved in 2020. A new law that limits when police can stop boats on the water also changes rules for protecting Florida's springs. Douglas Soul reports some environmental groups are worried.
One part of the Boater Freedom Act targets what are known as springs protection zones. These are areas that restrict anchoring and beaching boats in order to prevent damage to springs. Currently, the state must prove those activities would harm a spring to establish a zone. But the new law changes that to significant harm. It also requires proof that boating behavior is the predominant cause of damage. Ryan Smart from the Florida Springs Council says that's a lot harder to do.
So this is going to put a halt to any future springs protection zones, in my opinion, and possibly put these springs protection zones that are already in place at risk.
The law doesn't take effect until July, but it's already had an impact. State wildlife officials were supposed to discuss whether to create a protection zone at Silver Glen Springs in the Ocala National Forest at a meeting this month. But they pulled it from the agenda, citing the bill. Republican Senator Keith Truenow helped craft the law. He says residents were concerned boating restrictions would hurt the local economy. They also argue boats aren't the main cause of damage to the spring area. Truenow says the law balances preservation and water access.
You want to leave it better than you found it and, enjoy the nature that we have in our backyard.
Officials at the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission say they have no additional information at this time about the impact of the law. I'm Douglas Soul in Tallahassee.
It'll be partly cloudy and very hot today with highs in the mid-90s. Tonight, mostly clear, overnight lows in the mid-70s. Tomorrow, sunny and very hot with highs in the mid-90s. I'm Sean Canan with the WMNF News headlines.
This is The Scoop, recorded at WMNF Tampa.